friends of the Rock Cabin, Ronda, and all the volunteers for providing the refreshments. Thank you for the support of the Rock Cabin. The cabin restoration continues. We have descendants of A.L. Brock here with us tonight. Jim Brock and his sister. And we have Eddie and Joan Bostic from Austin, who have been very active in the Rock Cabin restoration. Eddie and Joan. And also want to acknowledge gentlemen and back here in the corner here who I met in October when we dedicated the marker for Bert Lockhart, which his grave site was identified in the West Columbia Historical Cemetery. Mr. Eric Baskin, who is a descendant of Bert Lockhart, lives right here in Lockhart. His wife had to leave and take one of them home there, so I think we're about ready to get going here on our second half. So I hope everybody's having a good time.
Thank you. If y'all didn't get any chocolate, there's chocolate out there now. Brownies. Okay. Donaly. Lockhart began to grow quite rapidly, as you've already stated in the beginning. And as it developed, tell us about the early 19th century hotels and boarding houses.
Well, during the early stages of Lockhart, there had to be places for people, travelers to go, and the hotels were very important to the settlement and the people coming to Lockhart. One of the sites for the hotels in Lockhart was on the northeast corner of the square where the Judicial Center was just recently moved from. Since 1850, or before 1850, there has been a hotel on that site until 1961. Can you imagine that over 100 years that there were hotels on that site? In 1850, George Fulgham built a hotel on that corner, and then a proprietor by the name of Champion Cowan also had a hotel there. It was the Cowan Hotel. In 1853, James Skinner purchased the building, tore it down, and erected a large hotel on the site. Also, just north of it, going toward the Presbyterian Church, he built a large livery stable that would house horses, buggies, and wagons. I mean, when you go to park at a hotel or a motel today, you have to have a place to park your car. Well, back in those days, they had to have a livery stable for parking their buggies or horses. Let me tell you, this was the real thing. This hotel was 60 feet in length, it was 26 feet in breadth, it was 3 stories high, it contained 30 rooms, and had a zinc roof. Now that's a pretty substantial building for 1850s. Well, in 1870, some people named Franks bought the Skinner's Hotel, and they changed the name of it to the Houston House. The name was changed to the Houston House because Fred and Mary Houston became the proprietors of the place. But on Sunday afternoon, January the 26th, 1879, a cyclone or a tornado came through Lockhart, and it destroyed most of the upper food story and the gallery around the Houston house. And it had to be the third floor, and the gallery had to be removed. In 1886, Peter and Margaret Carter came from Luling, and they purchased the Houston house, and they changed the name, obviously, to the Carter Hotel. Well, this building in 1897 then was torn down because the wooden building was getting pretty dilapidated by this time. And they replaced it with a two-story brick building, and Mrs. Carter's son-in-law, who was named Thomas S. Hodges, was the architect that built her the two-story Carter Hotel in 1879. He also built the first Christian church. He also built the library, the Eugene Clark Library. He also built the Caldwell County Jail that is now the museum. He built a lot of buildings in Lockhart and in Central Texas. And he did some pretty good work, I would say. And the Carter Hotel was built in 1897. There were other hotels on the southwest corner of the square. There was the Minot Hotel in 1855. There was the Trumbull Hotel. I like the study about the Trumbull Hotel because it was operated, the proprietor was Marcus Trumbull. He obviously got a lot of money because he purchased a large chunk of land a couple of blocks to the west of Lockhart going down San Antonio Street. And his hotel was sometimes referred to as the Trumbull Hotel, but it was also known as the Union House. Now, this may have been the boarding house where Susanna Dickinson was the cook and ran the boarding house. How many of you have never heard of Susanna Dickinson? I ran across somebody the other day, I was telling about her, and they said, well, who was Susanna Dickinson? Well, I have to stop and tell them that. Obviously, she was the only sole adult Anglo survivor at the Battle of the Alamo. She came to Lockhart and opened a boarding house. At least by that time, in the 1850s, she wasn't known as Susanna Dickinson. She was not known. She was known by Susanna Wilkerson, Dickinson, Williams, Herring, Bellis. It sounds like we could go on and on forever. The woman was married 5 times. She came to Lockhart, where she had her boarding house. She was a very good cook, obviously. People still talk about how good she was at it. By 1854, she was a resident in Lockhart. By 1856, she purchased 2 lots in the Marcus Trumbull survey, which are the subdivision. Now remember the Trumbull Hotel, the Union House. She purchased 2 lots in Marcus Trumbull subdivision. In 1857, she married a German gentleman by the name of Joseph William Hannig. In 1858, she and Joseph moved to Austin. By the way, Joseph had purchased several blocks of land in the Trumbull survey as well. And that's what makes me think that possibly Trumbull's hotel may have been where Susanna was operating her boarding house. But in 1858, they moved to Austin, and she died in 1883. And the Union House, or Trumbull's Hotel, burned in 1861 after she had left Lockhart. So I'd like to think that this might have been the hotel where she operated. There were other hotels, but most of those went into the 20th century, and Joe's going to talk a little bit about those.
What you remember about the many hotels in Lockhart while you were growing up here, like the Griesenbach Hotel, the Tate, the Carter, and the Alhambra?
Yeah, well, Mr. Holland Page built the Alhambra Hotel. That was right across the street from the fire station, that building there. And he called it the Alhambra Hotel. And he had his car dealership, Chevrolet car dealership downstairs, and he had gasoline pumps and served pumps and so forth. And he had a Chevrolet car dealership. But he had rooms up there at that hotel. And I think he had some apartments too, if I'm not mistaken, but he called that the Alhambra Hotel. Moon Hotel, that became the Tate Hotel. That was right where on San Antonio Street down here, where the part of the car lot Ford Motor Company across the street from the Ford shop is where the Moon Hotel was, which later became the Tate Hotel. After Miss Moon died, it was sold to Mr. Tate, who was a deputy sheriff. He and his wife bought it, and they served family-sized meal there, just like Miss Moon did. Her husband had a saloon, the Moon Saloon, in town, and when we went dry, the saloon keepers had to find another profession, so Miss Moon, I don't know when Mr. Moon put in a hotel, and what really put the Moon Hotel and most hotels on the go was the Luling oil field in 1926, when the Luling oil field was discovered. And boy, you couldn't find a place to sleep in Lockhart, in a hotel, or everybody was renting out rooms to the people working in the oil field. And I said, okay, there's the Moon and the Tate Hotel, the Alhambra Hotel. The Carter Hotel was the nicest hotel in Lockhart, and it had a coffee shop in it. And Mr. and Mrs. Pfeiffer, and Mrs. Pfeiffer was an Ed Missouri's daughter, who owned that hotel. And what other hotel did you mention, honey?
The Griesenbach.
Griesenbach. I remember the Griesenbach Hotel being torn down, and it's where that on the corner of Blanco and San Antonio Street, where that there's an office building there now, and when the Griesenbach Hotel was torn down, a service station was put there on that corner, which Joe Lipscomb ran the service station. But I remember the Griesenbach Hotel standing as just a big old frame, neatly painted hotel there, and they tore it down. I never saw so much lumber stacked up in the street. You had it nearly stacked right out in the street. It was out on the sidewalk. We'd be driving to town. I was afraid we was going to run into a pile of lumber. And Miss Cordy Griesenbach had a house where that telephone office is there. And I always wanted to ask some of her descendants if the Griesenbachs owned that house, or if she built that house. I can't answer that, but
You know, wonder why they tore the Grayson back down, to make room for something else, or?
Well, I think that it was just, it was time for it. It needed remodeling so much, and there wasn't enough business for them. They served meal at the Griesenbeck Hotel too, back in the staunch days of it, they tell me. Because Blanche Loma told that she used to go get food there and take it home, and it was awful good. But,
And the Carter was famous too for being a central location for coffee on your way to church. And
oh
then
yeah.
The
yeah.
Western Union was in there.
Western Union was in the Carter Hotel, and Gertrude, Missouri, and the Western Union was the cashier for the coffee shop there, and her sister and husband ran the hotel, and Mr. Ed Missouri owned that building.
One of the things that I remember Joe Bunch telling me, he didn't mention it tonight, but he told me a story about the Griesenbeck Hotel, which was just west of the Christian church. He said that Ms. Griesenbeck had a parrot in the lobby of a large parrot in the lobby of her foyer. There's, you go in the front door, and that parrot would sing ta-ra-ra boom-de-ay, ta-ra-ra boom-de-ay, whenever you would go in. So I thought that was quite interesting. It must have been quite something to hear that parrot tackling that song out. But you were talking about the Carter Hotel. When I was a kid, my mother used to take me to church at the Presbyterian church, and the Carter Hotel was on the corner where the Judicial Center used to be. And we would go into the Carter Hotel before we would go to church, and she'd get a cup of coffee, and I'd always get a Coke, and we'd sit in there, and I remember what the hotel looked like there on the corner. It had ceramic tiles that were little square or octagon-shaped tiles, just sort of like those black and white tiles that are in the entry as you came in before you got on the elevator downstairs here. And it was in the coffee shop of that hotel. But one of the interesting stories about the Carter Hotel was that it in 1920, former President, U.S. President, mind you, William Howard Taft visited Lockhart, and while he was a judge in the Supreme Court at that time, he had retired, he was no longer president, but he visited Lockhart and gave a talk here on the League of Nations. And one of the things the citizens of Lockhart did was they treated him to lunch at the Carter Hotel, and they treated him for a big dinner at the Carter Hotel. And Ms. Ferris, who was the proprietor, decided she was going to really fix up a nice meal for President Taft, and so she cooked squab and really went all out to get these squab and cook them just right. And she was so proud of herself and got everything ready, and they were ready to serve the meal and find out that Judge Taft was a vegetarian. So that was that must have made for an interesting evening, to say the least. But in 1930, let's see, I have a date here, 1923, they built onto the old Carter Hotel, which is here. Over to the left, they extended a brick building from 1923 that went all the way to the corner. And that was the part that I remember going in. This part was still standing, but I only remember going into the coffee shop, the corner there. And in 1960, it wasn't 61. Actually, that's another famous year, that was the year I graduated. But in 1960, the building was torn down, and that ended 100 and something year reign of the hotels that lasted on that block, on that corner. But there was also the Texas Hotel.
Yes.
And it burned in 1963. I had a cousin, as a matter of fact, that was a volunteer fireman at the time that was there and fighting the fire. And it was down right past the Ford Motor Company on the corner of Walnut and Blanco, I think. It's where the cars are being stored for the Ford Motor Company now. But right there on that corner, there was a Texas Hotel, and it burned in
Donaly?
67, I'm sorry.
Donaly,
Yes,
the dining room to the Texas Hotel was down in a kind of a cellar-like thing. It
Was
wasn't connected to the hotel, but you had to go out the door and down in. Yes, as kids, we waited at the Texas Hotel. If we had something out after school, we waited until Mom and Dad could come in and pick us up.
okay, well, I never went inside that
It was run
building.
by